Wyoming Territory, summer of 1883. The train hissed to a halt in the dusty town of Red Rock, steam curling into the blue sky like smoke from a dying fire. Ruthie Caldwell stepped down from the rail car, her gloved hands trembling as they clutched the handle of her carpetbag. Her boots hit the platform with a soft thud, and she looked around, heart thudding in her chest. She had never been farther west than St. Louis until now. She had never known this kind of dry heat either, or the way the wind could carry the soft scent of horses, dust, and pine through a town like a whisper. She had also never been this scared in her life. Her eyes scanned the crowd. She expected something hard, maybe even cruel. She had braced herself for it the entire journey. The letter from the man who had sent for her, a widowed cowboy in desperate need of a mother for his 2 young children, had been short and polite, but not warm. She had imagined a man full of judgment, maybe regret, maybe even someone who would send her right back. But then she saw him. He stood just beyond the edge of the platform, tall, broad-shouldered, with a sun-worn hat in one hand and 2 children, one boy, one girl clinging to each side of him. His shirt was clean but faded at the collar, boots scuffed from work. His face was quiet, thoughtful, and younger than she had expected. His deep brown hair curled slightly under the brim of his hat, and his eyes blue-gray like a storm just passing locked with hers. He walked toward her, slow and sure, and stopped just in front of her. "Miss Caldwell?" he asked. She nodded, voice caught somewhere in her throat. "Yes." He looked at her for a moment, long enough to make her heart race, then held out his hand. "Welcome home," he said, her breath caught. She stared at his hand, rough and honest, then looked at his face again. There was nothing cruel in it, nothing cold, just something steady, something like kindness. She reached out, took his hand, and for the first time in weeks her chest loosened. "I am Elijah Kane," he said gently. "These are my children, Will and Clara." The boy, Will, looked about 6, his hair the same dark color as his father's, his eyes wary but curious. Clara was smaller, maybe 4, her blonde curls tangled by the wind, one hand clutching a worn rag doll. Ruthie crouched to their level. "Hello, Will." "Hello, Clara," she smiled. "It is very nice to meet you both." Clara stepped half behind Elijah's leg, peeking out. Will just nodded. "They are still adjusting," Elijah said. "Their mother passed last winter. Fever took her too fast." "I am sorry," she said softly, standing again. He nodded once, then took her bag from her hand. "We have a wagon. It is a bit of a ride." They walked through town together. People looked, of course they did. A mail-order bride was not exactly a quiet affair in Red Rock. Ruthie kept her chin up, but her stomach twisted. Elijah noticed. "They stare," he said, "but they will forget about it soon." "It is not the stares I mind," she said. "It is what they might be thinking." He looked over at her. "Let them think what they want. I asked you to come because I needed someone strong, someone kind. You came. That is what matters." His words warmed her more than the sun. They reached the wagon, the children climbing up into the back while Elijah helped Ruthie to the seat beside him. She felt the calluses on his palm as he steadied her. She did not pull away. The ride out to the ranch was quiet. The road was long and rutted, fields stretching out under the open sky. Fences ran along part of it, then opened into wild prairie. The house appeared after a bend in the land, a sturdy 2-story with white shutters and a wraparound porch, worn but well kept. Elijah pulled the wagon close and helped the children down. Will ran for the door, Clara trailing behind. Ruthie stood a moment, looking at the house. "This is yours now, too," Elijah said beside her. "I do not know what to say," she admitted. "You do not need to say anything," he replied. "Come inside. Supper is warm." Inside, the house smelled of stew and fresh bread. A fire crackled in the hearth, and 2 place settings waited at the table, alongside smaller ones for the children. Ruthie moved slowly, taking it all in: the framed sketch of a woman on the mantel, the shelf of worn books, the tidy rooms. "I hope you do not mind," Elijah said. "I kept it simple. We can talk more tomorrow about what you want, what makes you comfortable." She looked at him, studying the lines of his face. "You are not what I expected." He gave a short, soft laugh. "You are not either." They ate together, the children quiet but watching her closely. Clara let Ruthie help her with her spoon. "We'll let her pour his milk." When the children were put to bed, Elijah offered Ruthie the spare room. "It is yours," he said. "There is no rush. I want you to feel safe here." She nodded, her voice low. "Thank you." That night, she sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the wind rattle the shutters lightly. She thought of the life she had left behind, her father gone, her job at the textile mill, the cold room she had rented in a crowded boarding house. There had been no place for her there. No future. She had come west expecting judgment, distance. She had come preparing herself for duty, not warmth. But Elijah Kane had taken her hand and told her she was home, and somehow she had believed him. Outside, the wind quieted. Inside, for the first time in a long time, Ruthie Caldwell slept without fear. The rooster crowed just past dawn, its call cutting through the quiet stillness outside. Ruthie sat up slowly, the quilt slipping from her shoulders. The room was pale with morning light, and the air smelled faintly of dry grass and wood smoke. She rose and dressed by the washstand, pulling her hair into a loose coil, fingers fumbling with unfamiliar pins. She had never tended animals or lit a fire without matches, but today she would learn. Downstairs, the kitchen was already warm. Elijah stood near the hearth, sleeves rolled to his elbows, stirring something in a tin pot. He glanced up when she stepped in but didn't speak right away. A quiet nod passed between them. "I started coffee," he said, voice low with sleep. "It's not strong." "I don't mind." She crossed to the table and set out 4 tin cups. "Is there a chore you'd rather I not touch?" He leaned against the counter, wiping his hands on a rag. "I won't have you doing anything dangerous, but if you're willing, Clara's henhouse needs checking. They've gone broody and she's worried none will hatch." "I can do that," Ruthie said. Will appeared in the doorway, still barefoot, hair pressed to one side. He squinted toward the stove. "Is there bread?" "In the oven warming," Elijah answered. "Go wake your sister." Will looked at Ruthie before turning. "She won't come unless you ask." Elijah nodded toward the stairs. "He's right. Clara's stubborn in the mornings." Ruthie hesitated only a moment before climbing the stairs. Clara's room was small and pale, with a patchwork quilt and a toy wooden horse on the windowsill. The girl lay curled on her side, thumb tucked beneath her chin. Ruthie knelt beside the bed. "Clara," she said softly, "there's honey for your bread." A pause, then a rustle of sheets. "Did the hens lay any blue ones?" "Not yet," Ruthie answered. "But I'm going to look. Want to come?" Clara sat up and blinked, curls tangled around her face. "Blue ones are lucky." "Then we'd best go find one." Downstairs, Elijah had set out plates. The bread was dense and warm, and the honey sticky on their fingers. The 4 of them ate at the table, the scrape of knives and spoons the only sound for a while. Ruthie noticed Elijah watching the children more than he ate, like he was listening for something unspoken. After breakfast, Elijah saddled the mare and rode out toward the southern pasture. Ruthie, with Clara in tow, crossed the field behind the barn to the henhouse. A stiff wind came down from the hills, full of dry grass and distant pine. The hens clucked low when they entered. Ruthie crouched to check each nest, brushing back straw. Clara whispered beside her, naming each bird as if they were old friends. They found 8 eggs, none blue. Clara didn't seem disappointed. "You think Papa likes you?" she asked as they walked back. Ruthie paused. "That's a hard thing to know." "Why?" because grown-ups don't always say what they feel. Sometimes they show it instead. Clara held out one of the eggs. "You can keep this one, for luck." Ruthie took it gently. "Thank you." That afternoon, Ruthie swept the floors and set beans to soak. Will helped her stack kindling beside the stove, asking questions about trains and the city. His voice was quick, his hands always busy. Clara napped curled on a quilt in the corner when Elijah returned. His shirt was dusted with earth, and a thin line of sweat darkened his collar. He stepped inside and removed his hat, eyes scanning the room. "You kept them alive," he said. "They made it easy," Ruthie replied. He sat down on the bench, rubbing his hands together. "Fence near the ridge spooked the cattle some. Did any get loose?" "3, found 2. One still off." "I could help look," he raised a brow. "You ever tracked a steer through brush?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm good at watching for signs." He didn't answer right away, just studied her face like he was weighing something heavier than her words. "All right," he said. "Not today. Tomorrow, if he's not back, we'll ride out." That evening, Ruthie watched the children play in the yard, their laughter rising into the softening sky. Elijah came to stand beside her on the steps. "They sleep better when the house feels full," he said quietly. She looked over at him. "Do you?" He didn't answer right away. "I'm starting to." The sun dipped low behind the hills. Ruthie felt the warmth of his arm near hers, not touching but close enough to know it could. The quiet stretched between them, comfortable and wide. "I wasn't sure what I'd find here," she said. "I wasn't sure you'd come. I didn't have many reasons to stay." He didn't press, just nodded once and looked out over the fields. "You'll have reasons now," he said after a moment, "if you want them." She turned her face toward him. "I think I do." The sky above them deepened to amber and the wind shifted, carrying the scent of clover from somewhere far off. Elijah reached up, adjusting the collar of his shirt, and Ruthie saw the edge of a scar near his wrist, pale and jagged. She didn't ask about it. She just stood beside him as the light faded, the air growing cooler between them but not colder. The next morning came with low clouds stretched thin across the sky, and the air held the weight of coming rain. Ruthie rose early, binding her hair tighter than usual, pulling on Elijah's spare riding coat from the peg by the door. It hung heavy on her shoulders, smelling faintly of leather and wood smoke. Elijah was already outside, cinching the saddle on the bay gelding. He handed her the reins of the gray mare she'd only watched from afar until now. "She's steady," he said. "Keep your knees close and your hand light." "I haven't ridden in years," Ruthie said, adjusting her skirt to sit astride without tangling. "And never for cattle. You'll be fine." "He's a red steer, white face, torn left ear. If he's wandered north, he'll be near the cottonwoods past the dry creek." They rode out side by side, the ranch falling behind them in slow rhythm. The grass was tall from late spring rains, brushing against the horses' legs as they moved. Ruthie kept her eyes ahead, scanning the land as Elijah had shown her broken grass, rubbed bark, anything that didn't belong. "He ever run far before?" she asked. "Not often," Elijah said. "But he's young, and the fencing was loose. Do you ever think of leaving all this behind?" He glanced over, then back to the trail. "No, this land's the only thing I've ever held onto that didn't walk away." Ruthie let that settle. "You think I'll walk away?" "I don't know you well enough to answer that." They rode in silence a while longer. A hawk circled overhead, casting a lean shadow across the brush. The gray mare shifted under Ruthie, restless with the wind picking up. "I'm not made for running," she said finally. "Not anymore." Elijah pulled his horse to a stop, scanning the ridge ahead. "There," he said, pointing. "Tracks heading west." They dismounted, following the trail on foot through loose brush and sand. Ruthie crouched near a patch of flattened grass, fingers brushing over a clump of red hair caught on a low branch. "He passed through here," she said. Elijah nodded. "Good eye." They found the steer not long after, caught in a narrow gulch, limping but upright. Elijah moved quiet and slow, rope in hand, while Ruthie circled wide to keep it from bolting the wrong way. Together, they guided it out with calm voices and patient steps. By the time they reached the pasture gate, the wind had shifted again, carrying the scent of wet earth. "You did well," Elijah said, tying off the gate behind them. "I liked it," Ruthie said, surprised by her own words. "The quiet, the work." He looked at her for a long moment. "You ever want children of your own?" She didn't answer right away. "I used to. After my sister died, I raised her boy for a while. Then he went to live with kin in Illinois. After that, I stopped hoping." Elijah didn't press. He just led the horses back toward the barn, his pace slow enough for her to walk beside him. That evening, Clara sat on Ruthie's lap while we'll read aloud from a worn book about foxes and winter. The fire burned low, and Elijah worked a piece of leather cord into a loop, his hand steady even as his eyes drifted toward Ruthie now and then. When the children were asleep, Ruthie lingered in the parlor, mending a torn hem by lamplight. Elijah leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I wasn't sure you'd take to it here," he said. "I wasn't sure either. You ask things no one here asks. You listen before you talk. I didn't come to fill silence with noise." He stepped closer, kneeling beside the hearth to stir the embers. "You miss the city?" "No, I miss my sister's laugh. I miss not being afraid of being alone." Elijah set the poker down, his back still to her. "You're not alone now." She folded the fabric across her lap, fingers pausing. "What if I want more than a roof and a seat at the table?" He turned then, eyes meeting hers. "Then I'll give it if you ask." Ruthie stood, slow and quiet, setting the folded shirt aside. She crossed the room, stopping just short of him. "I'm not asking for promises," she said, voice low. "Just space to belong." "You already do," he said, without trying. The lantern light caught the lines near his eyes, the edge of a faint smile that didn't reach his mouth but lived in his voice. Ruthie reached up and touched the collar of his shirt, fingertips grazing the worn edge. His hand came up gently, covering hers. Neither of them moved for a long time. The fire settled behind them, the logs shifting into a deeper glow. Outside, rain began to fall soft, certain, and steady. Ruthie didn't pull away. Elijah didn't let go. The rain passed in the night, leaving a silver sheen over the fields by morning. Ruthie stood on the porch with her sleeves rolled to her elbows, scrubbing the porch rail with a damp rag. The wood had taken on the scent of wet cedar, and the air was cool enough to lift gooseflesh along her arms. Elijah stepped outside, a rolled map in his hand and his boots newly cleaned. "There's a supply run in town," he said. "I usually take Will. You're welcome to come if you're up for it." She wrung out the rag, glancing toward the barn where Clara crouched beside a puddle, floating a walnut shell like a little boat. "She'll need watching. I'll leave the mare saddled for you, if you change your mind." She nodded, and he turned toward the corral. A quiet settled between them, not heavy but expectant. She watched him go, his posture relaxed but precise in every movement, like someone used to listening even when no one was speaking. Inside, Ruthie kneaded dough for supper biscuits while Clara sorted buttons by color on the floor. The girl had a way of humming under her breath, tuneless but soft, like the rhythm grounded her. Ruthie listened a while before asking, "Did your mother sing to you?" Clara didn't look up. "Only when she sewed. Papa doesn't sing." Ruthie dusted her hands clean and knelt beside Clara. "Would it be all right if I did? Just sometimes?" The child gave a small shrug, then slid a blue button into the red pile. Ruthie took that as permission. That evening, after supper, she sang while shelling peas, just under her breath. the same lullaby her sister used to hum when the nights ran too long. She didn't look to see if anyone listened. Elijah returned later than usual, the wagon bed full of flour sacks and dried beans. He carried a parcel wrapped in oilcloth and set it on the table without a word. When Ruthie opened it, she found a pair of leather gloves stitched small, each cuff lined with soft wool. "For the mornings," Elijah said. "Saw you rubbing your hands after the fences yesterday." She traced the seam with her thumb. "You didn't have to, I know." They left it there. The next day she took the gloves with her to the wash line, clothespins clutched between her teeth as she pinned shirts stiff with sun. The wind was restless, tugging at hems and sending the smell of sage across the yard. Clara chased a chicken past the fence while Will tried to fix a broken slat. "Careful," Ruthie called. "That hen's smarter than she looks." Will pointed at a crooked board. "This one's loose again. Bring me the hammer. I'll hold it while you nail." He returned with the tool and they worked in tandem, Ruthie bracing the wood while Will struck carefully. When the nail bent, he swore under his breath and looked up, eyes wide. "I didn't mean it. I've heard worse," she said, "but next time maybe try breathing before swinging." He looked at her, uncertain. "My ma used to fix things too, but she didn't like me helping." "Why not?" She said. "I always made it worse." Ruthie stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. "Well, I say you made it better." That night, Elijah lingered by the doorway while Ruthie folded blankets near the hearth. His shirt was damp near the collar from chopping wood and his hair curled slightly at the edges. "Will said you patched the fence." "He did most of it. I just kept the boards steady." "He said you didn't scold him when he bent the nail." "I don't see sense in yelling over learning." Elijah leaned one shoulder against the wall. "You're changing the way this house feels." She looked up from the folded wool. "How do you mean, it's quieter?" "But not empty." She regarded him for a moment, unsure whether to smile or look away. "I'm not trying to change anything. That's the part that matters." He stepped forward, close enough that she could smell the cedar still clinging to his sleeves. She didn't move. "I used to think asking someone to come here was just about filling space," he said. "Feeding the children, keeping the fire lit. But now I sit at the table and know it's more than that." Ruthie's fingers tightened slightly on the corner of the blanket. "I didn't think I'd matter to anyone again," she said. "Not in a real, everyday way." "You do," he said. She looked up at him, the distance between them a breath, maybe less. "And you," his voice dropped. "You're the first thing I look for in the morning." Outside, the last of the twilight faded and the wind stilled. Ruthie reached up slowly and brushed her fingertips along the edge of his jaw, not bold, just certain. He leaned into the touch. She rested her hand against his chest, feeling the warmth there, the steady beat beneath her palm. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Neither of them moved to step away. The rain stayed away for nearly a week. The days turned warmer, and with the thawed ground came work that couldn't wait: rows of root vegetables to be planted, new fence posts to be sunk before the cattle wandered again. Ruthie rose before first light most mornings, her sleeves rolled and boots laced tight, clay under her nails before the sun cleared the ridge. Elijah worked alongside her, silent as always in the early hours, but his presence steady, like the rhythm of a well-worn song. They didn't speak much while they worked. There wasn't need. He handed her seed sacks without asking. She passed him the mallet when his hands were full. They moved like they'd done it for years. Late one afternoon, when the last row had been covered and the horses fed, Ruthie found herself alone in the lean-to behind the barn, sorting through the vegetable stores. A small mouse had gotten into the carrots. She knelt down, brushing away the chewed ends and setting the good ones aside. Footsteps shifted behind her, Elijah's, by the weight of them. "You didn't have to do this tonight," he said. "Could have waited." I like knowing what will have come fall, she replied, not turning. He crouched beside her. You always plan that far ahead. I never used to, Ruthie said. But I like the idea now, of autumn, of knowing we'll still all be here. Elijah rested his forearms on his knees, his voice low. I used to think planning ahead was a way to invite disappointment. I did too. But I also think it's a kind of hope. That quiet between them settled like dust on sun-warmed wood. She turned toward him, and there was something in his face she hadn't seen before, not just care or steadiness, but something softer, more exposed. I've been waiting to know if this is what you want, he said. Not just the work or the children, but this, me. Ruthie didn't speak right away. She set the last carrot down, then wiped her hands on her apron and faced him fully. I didn't come here for love, she said, but I found it. And I'd be a fool to turn from it now. He reached out slowly and took her hand. His fingers were calloused, hers roughened by the same work, and when their palms met, it felt like something already built. That night they told the children. Will looked up from the floor, where he'd been carving a small horse from scrap wood. You mean she's staying? She's more than staying, Elijah said. She's family now. Clara climbed into Ruthie's lap, curling into her like she'd always belonged there. Does that mean you'll be my mama, if you want me to be? Ruthie said gently. Clara nodded against her chest. I already do. The next Sunday they rode into town together, all four of them. The preacher married them beneath the cottonwoods behind the chapel, with wildflowers tucked into Ruthie's braid, and a ribbon from Clara's doll tied around her wrist. Elijah wore his best coat, the one he hadn't taken out since the burial months before. He stood so straight, so quiet through the vows, but when he took Ruthie's hand, he held it with both of his like he'd never let go. We'll pass them the rings. Clara scattered wild rose petals down the path. The sky above was blue and vast, and the whole town, quiet though they were, nodded as the family passed, like some things didn't need saying. They built a new room off the back of the house that summer, not because Ruthie wanted space, but because Elijah insisted she should have a place for her sewing and her books. She filled it slowly, and sometimes when the children napped, she'd sit near the window and mend in the light, humming without realizing it. Elijah came in one evening with a basket of early apples. Ruthie took one, bit into it, and smiled. Didn't think they'd ripen this fast, he said. You've got a good eye for timing, she said. He crossed to her, brushed stray hair from her cheek, and kissed her with the kind of ease that spoke of every morning they'd risen together. Every night his hand had found hers in the dark. They didn't speak of the past much. There was no need. They shared stories when the children asked of a mother lost too soon, of a sister who once sang lullabies, but they never lingered in sorrow. The house was too full of laughter now, of biscuits made side by side, of Will's carving projects and Clara's endless questions. And when the wind picked up at night, rattling the shutters just a little, Ruthie always slept soundly, Elijah's arm across her waist, both of them breathing slow and sure. The land stayed hard, the work stayed long, but the days were no longer endured, they were lived. Together. Years passed, and the children grew tall and strong. Ruthie taught Clara to sew and Will how to soften leather. Elijah never stopped watching the horizon, never stopped walking the fence line, but now he always returned before supper. And Ruthie, who had once stepped off a train with nothing but a bag and a name, now stood with her hands in the soil of a home she'd helped build, her heart full. Love hadn't come with fireworks or grand declarations, it had come in the quiet, in shared labor, in trust earned over days and sealed with steady hands and soft glances. And it stayed, strong as the roots beneath their land, sure as the sunrise over the Wyoming hills.